They say when you're young, you can't tell the difference between recklessness and courage. Maybe that's why, when my boss looked me dead in the eye last Tuesday and said, "You're playing with fire," I didn't flinch. I only smiled and muttered back, "Then let me burn with you." It wasn't a line. It wasn't planned. It just slipped out, like a spark jumping from a wire that wasn't grounded properly. And the worst part? I wasn't even sure if I meant it as a joke. But maybe I should back up. I work at a small auto repair shop tucked behind a grocery store. It smells like oil, dust, and burnt coffee no matter the hour. We get maybe a dozen cars a day, nothing glamorous, nothing exciting. My hands are usually blackened by noon, and I've grown used to the sound of ratchets clicking like metronomes in the background. She doesn't belong here. That's the first thing you notice. Her name's Evelyn. She's the manager, my manager, and she carries herself like she was meant for places that smell of perfume and fresh paper, not gasoline and grease. She's in her mid-40s, with hair that looks like it's always catching stray sunlight, even under the dim fluorescence. She doesn't raise her voice much, doesn't need to. When she walks into the shop, the air feels tighter somehow, like the walls lean in just a little closer. I don't remember the exact day I started noticing her more than I should have. Maybe it was the afternoon she caught me staring too long at a stripped bolt instead of fixing it. She crouched down beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, a sharp contrast to the motor oil around us, and asked, "You stuck, or just daydreaming?" I'd laughed it off. She'd smiled, but not the polite kind. It lingered. That smile's been sitting in the back of my head ever since. Tuesday was no different at first. I was wiping down a wrench when she came by, holding a stack of invoices. Her nails tapped lightly against the papers as she waited for me to finish up. "You missed the deadline on these," she said, tone even, eyes sharp but not unkind. "Yeah, I'll get them done tonight," I mumbled, feeling 12 years old instead of 24. Her gaze held a second too long. It wasn't angry, wasn't impatient. It was something heavier, something unreadable. Then she sighed softly and shook her head. "You're playing with fire," she murmured. Not a threat, more like a warning. To herself, or to me, I couldn't tell. And that's when I said it. Without thinking, without guarding my mouth, I looked straight at her and replied, "Then let me burn with you." The silence that followed stretched thin. She didn't laugh. She didn't scold me either. She just stared, lips parting slightly like she had a response but thought better of it. Her fingers tightened around the stack of papers, and then, just as quickly, she set them on the counter and walked away. I stood there with my pulse hammering in my ears, the wrench slipping from my grip. For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake the image of her back turned, her shoulders a little stiffer than usual, as if my words had left a mark she couldn't quite shake off. Now it's all I can think about. That look in her eyes, that pause. I don't know if it meant anything. I just know I can't forget it. The next morning, she barely looked at me. Not in a cold way. Evelyn wasn't the type to freeze someone out, but in that careful, measured way that made every glance feel weighed before she allowed it. She kept her tone professional, her instructions clipped, her presence brisk. Still, she couldn't hide the circles under her eyes. We were going through the weekly stock together, lugging boxes of filters and brake pads onto the shelves. It wasn't glamorous work, but I didn't mind. It gave me an excuse to be near her without inventing one. She was standing on the step stool, arms stretched overhead, sliding a box into place. Her shirt rode up just slightly, and I looked away fast, focusing on the scuffed floor instead. My throat felt dry. "You don't have to do all the heavy lifting," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "I've got it." She gave a small laugh, soft, tired, but real. "If I left it all to you, this place would drown in back orders." Her hand brushed against mine when I passed her the next box. Just a fraction of a second, but it was enough to send a current down my arm. I don't think she even noticed. Or maybe she did, and that's why she drew back quickly, too quickly, wiping invisible dust from her palms. For a while, the only sound was the rustle of cardboard and the faint hum of the shop radio. Then she spoke, low, almost to herself. "I didn't sleep much," she admitted, sliding another box onto the shelf. I glanced at her. She was still facing forward, shoulders straight, but her jaw tightened as though she regretted saying it. Long night. I asked carefully. Her lips pressed into something between a smile and a line. Just life. Then, shaking her head, she added, "You don't need to worry about that." I didn't push. I just nodded, though my eyes lingered on her profile. The faint crease between her brows, the way she bit the inside of her cheek when she thought no one was watching. She carried herself like she had to keep everything balanced at once, as though if she let even one thing slip, the whole structure would collapse. When we finished, she stepped down from the stool, brushing a strand of hair from her face. For a moment, she looked up at me, and there was something raw in her eyes. Vulnerability, maybe, or fatigue breaking through the armor she always wore. It was gone in an instant. She cleared her throat, straightened her shirt, and gestured toward the office. "Thanks for the help." I nodded, though my chest felt heavier than it should have. As she walked away, I caught the faintest trace of her perfume again, sharp and lingering. And in that quiet moment, boxes stacked neatly, radio humming some forgettable tune, I realized I was noticing everything about her. Too much. Her laugh, her hands, the way exhaustion softened her edges. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't stop. It was almost closing time when the storm rolled in. Heavy rain rattled against the garage doors, turning the whole shop into a hollow drum. The others had already left, but Evelyn stayed behind, going through the week's receipts with her pen moving in sharp, precise lines. I lingered longer than I should have, pretending to tidy the workbench. In truth, I didn't want to walk out into the storm just yet, and maybe I didn't want to leave her alone in the dim office light either. "Still here?" she asked without looking up. "Waiting it out," I said, gesturing at the rain. Figured I'd save my shoes. That drew the faintest curve of her lips. She pushed the papers aside and rubbed her temple, sighing. For once, she looked less like my boss and more like just a woman who was tired at the end of the day. "You work too hard," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, unreadable. "That's rich, coming from you." The silence stretched. The storm filled it, steady and relentless. I should have gone back to wiping tools, but instead I stayed where I was, standing in the doorway of her office, watching her gather the receipts into a neat pile. Then, without thinking, I stepped closer. Close enough to see the fine lines near her eyes. Close enough that her perfume cut through the smell of damp concrete. "You ever get tired of carrying it all?" I asked quietly. She froze. Her hand stilled on the papers. For a moment, I thought she might tell me to leave, or remind me of the rules, the distance we were supposed to keep. But she didn't. Instead, she let out a breath. More than I'd admit. Her voice was soft, almost drowned by the rain. Something tightened in my chest. I wanted to say more, to tell her I noticed, that I saw the weight she tried to hide. But the word stuck. I was terrified of what would happen if I pushed too far. The air between us thickened, charged. My hand twitched at my side, aching to reach out, just to brush against hers, to offer something I couldn't name. Then her phone buzzed on the desk. The sound cracked the moment in two. She snatched it quickly, glanced at the screen, and her expression shifted, stiff, guarded. "Excuse me," she murmured, stepping away to answer. I turned toward the window, watching the rain blur the streetlights outside. I could hear her voice in the background, low and clipped, words I couldn't make out. An ex, maybe, or someone who had no idea they were intruding on something fragile. When she returned, she didn't meet my eyes. She slipped the phone into her bag and reached for her jacket. "Storm's letting up," she said, her voice steady again. I nodded, though my pulse was still racing. As she brushed past me, her sleeve grazed mine. A fleeting contact, nothing more, but I stayed frozen in place. Every nerve lit up as though it meant everything. It happened on a Thursday night, long after everyone else had gone home. The shop was quiet in that unsettling way, too quiet. The machines were still, the radio off, the hum of the fluorescent lights the only sound. Evelyn was sitting in the office with the blinds half drawn, staring at a spreadsheet on her laptop. I should have left an hour ago, but I kept inventing tasks, tightening bolts that didn't need it, rearranging tools that were already in place. When I finally drifted toward the office door, she looked up. Her eyes were tired, but sharp, like they'd been waiting for me. You're still here, she said. Not a question. Yeah. I leaned against the frame, suddenly unsure of what to do with my hands. Guess I lost track of time. She closed the laptop slowly, the soft click of it echoing louder than it should have. Then she sat back, arms crossed, studying me with a gaze that pinned me where I stood. What are we doing? She asked. The words dropped between us, heavy and precise, like she'd been holding them in too long. My chest tightened. I wanted to pretend I didn't understand, but I did. Every lingering glance, every pause too long, every silence that carried more weight than it should. I don't know, I admitted. My voice felt smaller than I meant it to. She exhaled through her nose, shaking her head slightly. This isn't normal. I almost laughed, but it came out as a rough breath. Nothing about you feels normal to me. That pulled her eyes back to mine. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air was thick, charged, like even breathing too loudly might break something fragile. Her fingers tapped against her arm, restless. Then she leaned forward, elbows on the desk, and whispered, "Do you realize how dangerous this is?" Yes. I swallowed hard. And I don't care. Her lips parted as if to answer, but no sound came. Instead, she stared, really stared, at me, and I thought I saw something flicker there. Not weakness, not fear. Something closer to surrender. The silence stretched, unbearably raw. My hands itched to move, to reach across the space, but I didn't. I couldn't. All I did was stand there, heart pounding, waiting for her to push me away or pull me closer. She didn't do either. Instead, she whispered so softly I almost missed it. "You make me forget how lonely I am." Her voice cracked on the last word, and it landed like a stone in my chest. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was locked, my body caught between stepping forward and running out the door. The only thing I managed was a single breath, rough and uneven, before the silence swallowed us whole again. And for the first time, I realized we could never go back to pretending. The next day, she wasn't herself. Not in a way anyone else would notice. Customers came and went, paperwork got filed, the shop kept running like always. But I noticed. Evelyn moved differently, like she was carrying an invisible weight. Her voice was softer, her posture just a little tighter, as though she was afraid someone might look too closely. That evening, when the others were gone, I found her in the office again. She was staring at her phone, thumb frozen above the screen. She didn't hear me come in until I spoke. "Everything okay?" She startled, then quickly set the phone face down on the desk. "Fine," she said too fast. I hesitated, then sat on the edge of the doorway, pretending not to notice how tense she was. "You don't look fine." A pause, then a long sigh. She picked up the phone again, hesitated, and finally turned it toward me. The screen showed a voicemail notification. "I wasn't going to listen," she whispered, "but I can't stop staring at it." "Who's it from?" I asked softly. Her thumb hovered, then tapped play. A man's voice filled the office, low, strained, carrying that desperate edge people only get when they know they've already lost something. "Evelyn, I know I messed it up. I shouldn't have left the way I did. I keep thinking about us. About you. I don't know if you'll even hear this, but I miss you." The message ended. The silence after it felt louder than the rainstorm from 2 nights ago. Evelyn didn't move. Her hand clenched around the phone until her knuckles whitened. "That was my ex-husband," she said finally, voice flat. "We haven't spoken in years. He used to leave messages like that in the beginning, but he stopped. Until today. I didn't know what to say. My chest felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of the room. You remind me of him," she added quietly, almost too quiet. Her eyes stayed fixed on the desk. "Not in the way you act. In the way you look at me. Like I still matter." The words landed heavy, deeper than anything she'd said before. I wanted to reach across the desk, to tell her I wasn't him, that I wasn't here to leave. But all I managed was a whisper. "I don't think you realize how much you matter." That made her finally look at me. Her eyes were wet but steady, sharp as ever, and for a long moment she held my gaze like she was searching for something inside it. Then she blinked, a single tear slipping down before she brushed it away, almost angrily. She stood, straightened her jacket, and cleared her throat. "Lock up when you're done," she said. Her voice was firm, but her hands trembled as she gathered her bag. And just like that, she walked out. I sat there in the dim office, the voicemail echoing in my head, and realized the ground between us had shifted forever. For 2 days, she avoided me. Not entirely. Evelyn was too professional for that. Orders got filled, schedules were set, the shop ran smoothly as ever. But she kept the distance surgical, instructions delivered without eye contact, questions answered with clipped efficiency. I should have done the same. I should have let the space cool whatever this was. But instead, I stayed late again. The rain had passed, the night unusually still. I found her in the office, sitting with her head in her hands, the desk lamp casting a warm halo around her. For a second I thought about turning back, leaving her the solitude she clearly wanted. But my feet didn't move. "You don't have to hide it," I said softly. Her head lifted. Her eyes were tired, rimmed red, but not angry. Just worn. "Hide what?" "That you're hurting." For once, she didn't argue. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling like the truth had finally drained her of the strength to fight it. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore," she whispered. I stepped closer, my pulse hammering so hard it felt reckless just to breathe. "Neither do I." The silence stretched between us, heavier than before, but not unbearable this time. Not dangerous, just honest. Slowly, she reached for the mug on her desk. Her hand trembled faintly, and before I could think, I covered it with mine. She froze. Then, with a soft exhale, she let her fingers stay beneath mine. No fireworks. No grand confessions. Just the weight of her hand under mine, solid and fragile all at once. It felt like the most dangerous thing I'd ever done, and the safest. Her eyes finally met mine, unguarded now, and in them I saw everything she'd been trying to keep locked away. The loneliness, the exhaustion, the fear of being seen, and the quiet relief that she was. "People will talk," she murmured. "Let them," I said. A faint, broken laugh escaped her. She shook her head, then leaned forward, resting her forehead against the back of her hand, against me. We stayed like that. No kissing, no declarations, no promises we couldn't keep. Just two people sharing the same silence, holding on to something that didn't need words to exist. The clock on the wall ticked past another minute, then another, but neither of us moved. Finally, she whispered, almost inaudible, "I don't feel alone right now." And I knew, without saying anything back, that it was enough. Looking back now, I can't point to a single moment when everything changed. Not the storm, not the voicemail, not even that night in her office when her hand finally stayed under mine. It wasn't one instant. It was all of them, strung together like small lights on a wire, each one burning quietly until the whole thing glowed. Evelyn never became some fairy tale figure in my life. She stayed who she was, complex, layered, guarded when she needed to be. But she let me see her cracks, the soft places she didn't show anyone else. That was enough. And me? I stopped pretending I was just killing time at this job. Being around her forced me to grow up, to notice the small details, the tired slump of her shoulders at the end of the day, the way her laughter carried more weight when it slipped out unguarded, the silence she used to protect herself. I learned that love, if that's even what you call it, doesn't always announce itself with fire. Sometimes it's quieter. Sometimes it's just the relief of knowing someone sees you when you're invisible to everyone else. We never made promises. There was no dramatic confession, no sweeping decision about what we were. What we shared lived in the pauses. The way she'd linger by the door a second longer when leaving. The way her hand would brush mine when there was no reason for it to. Those moments didn't fix her loneliness or my restlessness, but they gave both of us something solid to hold on to. I think that's the part no one tells you. It's not about grand gestures. It's about the small truths you can't unsee once they're out in the open. The fact that she made me braver, even when she didn't mean to. The fact that I made her feel less alone, even when I wasn't sure how. People still ask me why I stayed in that job as long as I did. I never give them the real answer. But the truth is, those years taught me more about connection than anything else ever has. About how fragile and stubborn the human heart can be. about how sometimes the people you're not supposed to fall for are the ones who end up changing you the most. Maybe that's what Evelyn meant when she warned me I was playing with fire. Maybe she was right. But if fire is what it takes to feel truly seen, then maybe burning isn't the worst fate after all. So what do you think? Have you ever met someone who changed you quietly, in ways you only realized much later?